What's going on, guys? Welcome back to another episode of Brotherly Love in the District, up to episode 11. And today is going to be a more all around episode as opposed to just focused on one thing. And I'm Tristan. You got Jacob on the other end. Jacob's going to go ahead and tell you what we're going to talk about today.
So today, the big news in the NFL is that Julio Jones wants out of Atlanta. He revealed this in a kind of impromptu interview with Shannon Sharp and Skip Bayless, but he didn't realize he was on live TV. And we're also going to talk about the NHL playoffs, talking about how the Caps were eliminated last night, and going to talk about how the Oilers blew a 3-0 lead to the Winnipeg Jets. And then we're going to have some few anecdotes to say about baseball, but let's get right into it.
So first thing, we'll talk about Julio since that's not really focused on either Philly or Washington. Julio was on the phone with Shannon Sharp, and I didn't know that this was planned until you just told me that. I thought that this was a planned interview, and Shannon asked Julio, he's like, so I've heard like there's interest in you possibly going to Dallas. Or are you going to stay with Atlanta? And Julio Jones said, nah, I'm out of there. He's like, I am not staying in Atlanta. And another funny thing was he said he doesn't even think of going to Dallas. He doesn't want to go to Dallas. And then he also said he wants to win. And Shannon Sharp and Skip Bayless both called out Dallas and said, oh, well, if you want to win, then you're definitely not going to go to Dallas.
Yeah, I think that's really funny, but also a good point. If you look at Julio Jones's contract, he is currently on a 3-year, $66 million deal. This year, he's going to be paid a total of $15.3 million. $15.3 million. The next year, 11.5, and that his last year, 11.5. So that is a very hefty contract that if the Dallas Cowboys were to trade from, they'd one have to take on that big contract and two give up pretty much all the remaining draft capital. And I honestly think it would kind of doom the team because if you look at it, they need a lot more than just a single wide receiver, and they need an entire offensive line and an entire defense. So if you were to trade for Julio Jones, yeah, you'd have an exciting offense, but Dak would be under pressure constantly, and you couldn't hold teams to fourth downs.
They're already spending $75 million on their top three players in Ezekiel Elliott, Dak Prescott, and Amari Cooper. And I think wide receiver is one of their last needs. I mean, CeeDee Lamb, Amari Cooper, and
It is their last.
Michael Gallup is a good complement for all of that because Michael Gallup's a good player, but he goes kind of under the radar. And I think after the injury that Dak Prescott just took with his ankle, Dak Prescott, I don't care what anyone says, he's not going to play at like the same quarterback. Dak Prescott was someone who could look downfield, and if he needed to, he'd be willing to scramble. If your ankle is bent, if you're watching on YouTube, you'll see this, but if your ankle is bent like that when it's supposed to be straight, you're not going to be willing to run immediately out of the pocket. Like the running is one of the last things that you're going to want to do. Like after Carson Wentz tore his ACL, you could tell by the way he was playing, he didn't want to move out of the pocket much. He did if he needed to, but he still didn't. That was his last resort, as opposed to when he was in trouble, he would get out quicker. So, I mean, Dak Prescott's not going to play like the same quarterback. So offensive line is what they're going to need the most. And Julio Jones is not going to help that at all. I mean, and Julio Jones, like you said, he wants to win, so he's not going to go to Dallas.
Yeah, and this is an integral year for Dak Prescott. He's coming off a very nasty injury, and I don't know which ankle it was, but it possibly could have been his plant foot. So that's definitely going to affect his long distance throwing because you have to, when you drop back and you plant, that's going to be putting a lot of
Where your strength is
pressure
coming
on
from.
that ankle. And yeah, it's all starting from the legs and being brought up. So this is a very integral year for him. When you're coming off that serious of an injury, you need time. You need to protect it at all costs. In Dallas, they do not have the offensive line to be able to do that. One, it gets Dak more time. Two, it takes away the stress off of them because we've seen without an offensive line, their running backs have struggled severely. So that option is pretty much not there. So the Dallas Cowboys, I think, are in a lot of trouble because if Dak gets hurt again, they're screwed again. Like they're in some serious trouble.
Dak Prescott, the last thing he needs to worry about is getting Julio. And I think with this coming out, I mean this offseason has been pretty fun to watch. I mean, Aaron Rodgers wants out of Green Bay, and I saw today that he isn't going to OTAs.
Neither is Deshaun Watson. Did you see that as
I
well?
mean, like all these players are one out of their teams, and Julio Jones just adding to the mix. The last person I would see asking out of a team would be Julio. Like Julio just seems like such a down to earth player and such like a you know nice player that he wouldn't want to ditch on his team. But I mean, I understand the frustration. You blow a 28-3 lead in the Super Bowl, and you're the only one. I think if they won the Super Bowl, he might have won MVP with the clutch catches that he was making towards the end of the game. Even though they lost, I think he had a pretty good chance of winning MVP if they won.
And he definitely wouldn't be wanting out. Like I honestly thought that he was going to be a career player, just playing his entire career for one team. But as you said, that blowing the lead, like that was their year. And after that, they started losing players, whether it was to retirement or just them signing different places. But they couldn't recapture the magic. Like that really was their year. And if you look at it, I'm not sure who he would go to because he wants to win, but what winning teams have the capital to trade for him?
I saw talk that he wanted to go to New England.
I thought he said he wanted to win. A
that I
rookie
that was
quarterback,
that was about a
no
week ago.
offensive what he'd be the only offensive weapon, and their defense is aging, and all their players can't.
That was also a week ago, so a lot of things have changed. The last time that the Falcons have made the playoffs once since the Super Bowl, and they lost to the Eagles in the divisional round. That was the year the Eagles won the Super Bowl. So yeah, they've been to the playoffs once and they lost that game. They lost in the divisional round the next season to the Eagles. So I mean, they haven't done anything lately for Julio.
Yeah,
And so I don't see them.
He ain't coming back, but I have no clue who he's going to go to. Like I don't think I can see him going to the 49ers because they just traded like the first to get like to draft up.
And Jimmy Garoppolo doesn't know how to throw the ball.
Yeah, and they have a unsure
Deebo Samuel
quarterback in Trey Lance.
They also have Deebo Samuel and Brandon Ayuk. I don't know if they're really going to be looking for Julio. And I don't think Atlanta will get this, but Atlanta was saying they want a first-round pick for him, which I don't think they'll get. He's 32.
Yeah, a 32-year-old wide receiver. You're not getting a first. That is
I think they could get a second for him, maybe a future second. I don't think.
Tell me what you think about this. To kind of appease Aaron Rodgers, the Packers try and get Julio Jones.
That's not happening. No.
I mean,
no way.
You never know.
There is no way on God's green earth that Julio is going to the Packers. They already have Devontae Adams, and he just signed a 4-year, $58 million contract. So you add another 3-year, $66 million contract.
The cap space
actually
a nightmare.
Yeah, and so he didn't just sign this 4-year contract, but this is the last year of his 4-year contract, which means he's going to have to get re-signed next year. Then you have Julio Jones, who just got his contract. So I mean, they're not in the market for a wide receiver. Aaron Rodgers is not going to go back to Green Bay. Julio is not going to go back to Atlanta. And if they do, they'll have to sit out for the beginning of the season before they decide to move on.
Yeah, and as a Washington fan, I wouldn't want Julio Jones. I like where we've gone with our wide receivers. Like, if we're gonna give up a lot of players in a trade package in a first, I'd want it to be a decent quarterback. But yeah, like I'm trying to think of possible trade destinations for Julio Jones. There isn't a lot. Like I don't think Atlanta's gonna get a first. I think they'd be lucky to get a second, if I'm being quite
Yeah.
honest. So this definitely could be interesting to see how this plays out, because I'm not sure there's a lot of winning teams who would be able to are willing to shell out the necessary pieces to get him. It might be a team that feel like they're that player away from being able to be a contender.
Yeah, I don't see Julio. We won't be able to figure it out until once, like, now that he's actually said he wants out and it's been caught on camera on national television,
On 4K.
you'll see teams start to look at it, but there's nothing going to be happening for about a week, I think. Maybe next week when we do our podcast again that it'll start to come in, but as of right now there won't be anything for a little bit, I don't think. I want to talk about, so in our last episode, and I talked to you a little bit about this before we recorded, but our last episode, and we did our predictions with our seasons for Washington and Philly. And just what do you think is the reason you guys will win 12 games? And you said that was on the high end, right?
Mm-hmm. High end.
Okay, so give me your realistic guess.
Like the high end 12, low end I'd say is about 9. 10 or 11 I think is a realistic, because even Tristan,
I think 11 is still a little. 11. I think 11
You're not
is still a
giving
little.
enough. Okay, because our defense won us a lot of games, and the defense is only going to get better with the natural progression of the young players and the additions of the pieces in the secondary, as well as Jermaine Davis. It's only getting better. And if you think of all the offensive weapons we've been able to add some a little more depth to our offensive line. Think about the wide receivers we've been able to add: Curtis Samuel, Adam Humphries, and we still have Terry McLaurin, we still have Logan Thomas, and we still have Antonio Gibson coming out of the backfield. There's very few areas where you can say Washington is weak. Like, say what you want about Ryan Fitzpatrick, but I think we'll be able to give him the time just to be able to make the smart reads. Like when he was in Miami, they didn't have an offensive line. They didn't really have a lot of pieces. And when you remember what he was doing for the Buccaneers, they didn't exactly have enough.
That was for 4 games. He did that for 4 games, and then he went downhill right after that. In Miami, he got benched multiple times, if you recall, for Tua, and then got brought back out because Tua was also playing awful. He has never been a steady quarterback. That is why he is a journeyman and hasn't had a steady starting job for any team in the NFL.
We just need an above mediocre quarterback. Do you understand? Like, we could have been a 10-game winner last year if we didn't have Dwayne Haskins as our quarterback. He actively lost us multiple games. Like, I'm going to go through our schedule and talk about games that Dwayne Haskins lost us. Okay, so give me a moment here. You start talking about something else.
Do you know how many teams Ryan Fitzpatrick has played for?
Isn't it like 10?
He played for the Rams, the Bengals, the Bills, the Titans, the Texans, the Jets, the Bucks, the Dolphins, and now Washington. That is 9 football teams. It is bad when he goes in. He got asked when he went into Washington, they're like, okay, so like, how are you going to make this team better? And he goes, every game is a revenge game for me because I've played for every team in the NFL. That's not a good thing.
That's funny, though. He's joking around, Tristan.
He hasn't played on a single team for more than 2 seasons. And you're telling me you think that he will be above mediocre for
Yes.
a long
He
enough
literally just
time
needs
for
to
the Washington football team to win even 10 games I think is a little risky. For 12 games at that,
Tristan, he just needs to be mediocre. That's the thing. He doesn't need to do anything super special. He doesn't need to carry the team. He literally just needs to not throw interceptions and score enough points so that the defense can do well. So if you look at the games that Dwayne Haskins lost us, in week 6, we lost to New York, and Dwayne Haskins, I believe, was the quarterback.
his touchdown to interception ratio is 223 to 169. That's not great.
But name a single good team he's been on.
He's played 3 full seasons in his 15-year career. 3 full seasons. And that might not even be starting. For Buffalo, I believe those were both starting. And for the Jets, I believe that was starting. My point here is that Fitzpatrick is not going to be, even if he needs to be mediocre, he's not a stable enough quarterback. He's been on 9 different teams in 15 years, and he doesn't have that great of a touchdown interception ratio. Here, the odds of the division, just to make, this is from Odyssey.com, 106.7 The Fan. And the odds per Vegas on who's going to win the NFC East, they do not have an NFC East winner repeat, but they have Dallas at plus 115 to win, then Washington right behind them at plus 225, the Giants then at plus 450, and Philly at plus 500.
How are Dallas the favorites? They have no defense or offensive line. How do people not see that?
Because they have a steadier quarterback than Washington and Dallas, and New York and the Eagles.
Tristan, we saw that happen for the first 3 weeks, and they were like 1-3.
How do you go 1-3 in the first 3 weeks of a season? Dallas.
Whatever.
I'm not agreeing with you in saying Dallas is going to win the division, but I think
period.
I don't think they will either. I think this division is going to be a toss-up overall because I don't think you can predict right now who's going to win. You're going to have to wait until the season because all these teams are so bad that it's sketchy. Do you know the last time that Washington had 12 wins in a season? I'll give you a hint. It's not in this century.
It's definitely maybe a few years after we won our Super Bowl.
It was 91 was the last time you guys had 12 wins.
I'm pretty sure was either the year before or the year we won a Super Bowl. But if we had a steady quarterback that wasn't on one bum leg, we easily could have been a 10 or 11 win team, Tristan. If we almost beat the Seahawks with Dwayne Haskins as our quarterback. Just think about that. Remember when last year when everybody was thinking that the Seahawks were going to win the Super Bowl? Everybody's like, this is their year.
I thought they were going to win.
At some point, I did too. I will admit that. But we easily could have been a 10 or 11 win team if we had a steady, just even a mediocre quarterback that wasn't throwing picks left, right, and center. For this, we could have beaten the Giants twice, which would have brought us up to 9-7. We should have beat the Lions. That would have brought us to 11. And we won the Seattle and Carolina games.
Let's see, 14 interceptions for Dwayne Haskins last season. And Ryan Fitzpatrick, why is my screen dead? Ryan Fitzpatrick last season had, where is it? 8 interceptions. Dwayne Haskins started the same amount of games. So you got 6 less interceptions with Ryan Fitzpatrick last season.
And if you think about that, that could have been a lot better. And even like some of the first like couple games that Alex Smith was in, especially like he came back against the Giants, we could have easily won that game. And if you think about the game Kyle Allen was in against our first Giants game where we went for 2, if we went for just the extra point, we had the momentum in that game, we easily could have won that too. So Tristan, it's not completely out of the question to say that we could be a 10 win team, because even if the quarterback isn't steady, you can literally just turn into a team that runs a lot and throws a lot of screen passes. We have a decent enough decent enough blockers, and we have 2 pretty decent backs. Like the Saints did it for the last few years.
Alvin Kamara is on a totally different planet than both of your running backs combined.
But Tristan, we have a better defense than the Saints. That equals it out.
You do now. Now you do. You didn't before, but since the Saints are in cap travesty now, you will.
But if you look at the Saints teams that, like, when Drew Brees' arm was starting to go like a limp noodle, like if you look at the defenses and defense they had, like ours are better. We have a younger, faster line, and that makes your entire defense automatically better.
So we are now going to change that to a 10-7 record as opposed to 12-5.
No, I'm still sticking with 10-12. Like, and Tristan, how are we not talking about you thinking the Eagles will win 7 games? What about last year?
I think that's a lot more realistic than 12 for Washington.
No, it isn't. Tristan, what about last year said, you know what? 7 games. Like, what about that gave you any ounce of hope? Because Tristan,
here's my thinking behind
it. Still aging and not that great. You do not have any linebackers. You have 1 cornerback.
And that's the one thing that I have there is I think 7 is a more average guess than 12 for Washington. But I think the Eagles on the low end could win another 4-game season. 5 games, maybe.
Yeah.
I think that's very possible. I still think 7's more realistic than 12 for Washington. But as you said, the linebackers, I think the Eagles have a very big toss-up season. Like, they have the AFC West. I think the Raiders are a toss-up. The Chargers are a toss-up. The Chiefs we're clearly going to lose to. And I think the Chargers we will lose to most likely because Justin Herbert is disgusting. But I think the Raiders in Denver is a toss-up. You have the NFC South. I think the Saints are a toss-up. The Falcons are a toss-up.
Yeah, Tristan, is a toss-up.
The Panthers.
3 wins or 4 wins? Ooh.
Okay, I do not believe that 3 wins is. I think we are getting at least 4 wins. But I still think 7 is more realistic than 12.
But Tristan, your defense couldn't stop a peewee team.
And they didn't address it in the draft at all. That's the one thing that I had against. That's the one thing that I had against the draft.
How was even the analysts not talking about you drafting a linebacker or a cornerback? Like, not a linebacker. Like we didn't draft
1 purebred linebacker in the draft at all.
And we didn't address. You didn't draft the good cornerback to go with Darius Slade. You drafted another short guy.
We drafted another slot corner to play on the outside.
Yes.
And
what are you doing?
Who went to Texas Tech, and Texas Tech gave up like an average of 60 points a game last season.
That's horrible.
Yeah. So
how do you draft a cornerback who was averagely giving up like 60?
Look, I'm not gonna lie, 7 could be a little bit out there, but our offense is gonna have to be lights out if we are gonna win. If we're gonna even get close to winning, even anything above 6, our offense has to play lights out.
Yeah,
and I think
click.
But my thinking behind that and why I say 7 is because I think our offense is kind of going into the season underrated. And you're going to laugh at me for that, and I get why. But I mean, like you said, our offensive line, it's not getting any younger. But I mean, Brandon Brooks is a perennial Pro Bowler. So is Lane Johnson. Jason Kelsey is a toss-up Hall of Famer. Then you have Jordan Mailata, who is a 7-foot freak at left tackle, with Andre Dillard, who was a first-round draft pick behind him. And then you got Landon Dickerson in there. Who's our other guard? Isaac Seumalo, who's another big guy. And Isaac Seumalo is probably the weak link of that offensive line. And I mean, he's still not entirely awful. The offensive line injuries will be what kills us. And I think we have a better situation depth-wise on offensive line than we did last year. Landon Dickerson, who was our second-round pick, has played all 5 positions in college. And so I think he's a good backup. You got a first-round pick behind Jordan Mailata. And then you have Jack Driscoll, who proved he can play last season in the NFL. When he played an entire quarter last season injured with a sprained MCL. So I mean, our depth at O-line is way better. Our quarterback play is going to be a big question mark going into the season.
Yeah, and
I think Jalen Hurts.
That's the reason.
I think Jalen Hurts will be the starter. But again, hang on, I'm not done yet. You're right. Our quarterback play is going to be a question mark. But you can't tell me that I think Jalen Hurts has a better outlook for starting and finishing the season than Ryan Fitzpatrick does. Jalen Hurts played 4 games last season, beat the Saints when the Saints were the best team in the NFL. And if they weren't, they were the second best team. They had a top 3 record in the NFL. And I'm pretty sure they were number 1 in the NFL when we played them. And if not, they were number 2.
What does it mean they're the
You
best
can double check that.
in the NFL? Like, at what point were they even considered in the top 5? You can have a good record, but it still means you're flawed.
You're telling me you don't think the Saints were a top 5 team last season?
No.
Oh my gosh. No. You're crazy, dude.
Tristan, they had Drew Brees starting even when they
were
Tristan.
They lost a single game with Taysom Hill at quarterback. They lost 1 game.
Even when they saw that, they still put faith in Drew Brees for some obscure reason. Like the smart move was either to put Taysom Hill in or Jameis Winston. But the reason I didn't have him in the top 5 is because they were still foolishly following a quarterback who was past his prime.
You're gonna put in a backup quarterback who has barely played quarterback in the NFL over a Hall of Famer. You're telling me you think that's a smart move?
Tristan, he didn't have
thank you. Now, as I was saying,
Tristan,
I think
Tristan, Ben Roethlisberger, he's probably going to be a Hall of Famer. It doesn't mean he should have been a starter.
But you're not going to start.
People lose it, Tristan.
You're not going to start a backup quarterback.
Tristan, they had better quarterback options, and their team has shown to been playing better when those other quarterback options were in the game versus Drew Brees. Their team, you don't have to do a lot in quarterback. You really don't. Throw it to Kamara or throw it to Slant Boy, but you have some other decent options. You don't need to do that much. And Drew Brees was still messing it up. His arm was gone, and teams realized that he's not going to throw it deep. So you can pretty much either pack all your linebackers either around the edges to try and contain
in the box.
Yeah, try and contain Alvin Kamara,
the flats.
Yeah, get rid of Slant Boy, but even Slant Boy was out for most of the year.
I think the Saints were a top 5 team when Jalen Hurts started his first game. He almost came back against the Packers. He started against the Saints, won the game, came back from a 17-point deficit and almost beat the Cardinals, which I think we could have won that game if Larry Fitzgerald and DeAndre Hopkins weren't absolute monsters. Those guys are insane. And then the Dallas game, he didn't play too amazing. And the Washington game, we probably would have won had he not got pulled. So I think Jalen Hurts is the coaching staff says it's his or says they're going in as an open competition, but I think it's Jalen Hurts' spot
Yeah,
to
why
lose
would you go with Joe Flacco? That's my real question.
because
Why would you do
it's an entirely new coaching staff. So you have, and Jalen Hurts is a competitor. He's not going to go in and just waltz all in on in there. Think he's automatically has a starting job. He's a competitor. He's going to play. He's going to play for the starting job. He's not going to be going just to be like, oh, I'm the starter, I'm fine. He's going to be playing for a starting job every week, and he knows that. And so I think that'll drive him to play better. Our receivers are way better than they were last season or the season before that. Even when they were fully healthy last season, our receivers are better now. If Devontae Smith is half of what he's expected to be, I think we have a decent wide receiver core. And our running backs, we have the most complete running back group we've had since Deuce and Brian Westbrook. Miles Sanders, who is clearly our first and second down back. You got Jordan Howard for a power back, and you have Kerryon Johnson to catch passes out of the backfield. You got Boston Scott for a changeup. Our running backs are the best. We have a pretty darn good backfield looking at it. They've made some nice moves in free agency at running back.
But Tristan, saying Washington has had the most complete team in a while isn't saying much because our teams have been pretty crap. So saying you have the most.
So you're even getting at my point that they shouldn't win 12 games.
Point, but it still doesn't mean it's a super duper impressive thing. Like, name a running back that has played like. You guys have had at a time, it seems like you've only had one decent running back at a time because it was DeMarco
Ryan Westbrook and Deuce Staley.
Yeah, but even in between that and there, you've always had one running back. Because can you name the backup to LaShawn McCoy?
Oh, shoot. Dang, that's rough.
Name the backup to DeMarco Murray.
Yeah, I can't.
And
DeMarco Murray was awful.
It's not that yes, I think it's good. Teams that have more options at running back, I think do it better, but it's not super impressive to say that because after you guys have had star running backs, after that you've had bums pretty much.
All right, I see your point. And once we start getting closer to the season, and once we start seeing jobs be filled in as the season comes closer and closer and approaches more, and once we see preseason, that'll really help us fill in voids. But that's why I made the last one too early season predictions, because we still have
there's still a lot that
it's May. We still have 4 months until the season starts. So there's a lot that could happen.
In theory, the Eagles could trade for Deshaun Watson, or the Washington football team can trade for Aaron Rodgers, or something absolutely ridiculous out of the blue like that still could happen. Or a player gets knocked out for the season and preseason for one of our teams that could really throw our thinking into the loop. So it is a little too early, and I am a little optimistic because I haven't seen last year I'd say was the most fun, but yet it was the most fun, but anger inducing to watch, because whenever Dwayne Haskins was in, I never watched a complete game he was in because I'd get way too mad at the game at him. So I would just walk upstairs and say, I'm not watching this. But that playoff game against the Bucks, even though we did lose, that was the most fun I had watching as a Washington fan ever.
I didn't watch a kneel down until I think I think the first kneel down I watched was week 8 or 9 when the Eagles were getting ready to win. That was the first. I would always turn the game off prior because I couldn't watch it because it was too painful to watch.
Yeah. When Haskins was so mad.
But once we get closer, we can figure everything out. We can figure more stuff out going into the season. Let's jump into the NHL because there's a lot that happened in the past couple of days. Well, since the last time we talked, and we'll get to Washington afterwards because that's going to be the thing we go most in depth about. So first off, I'm going to go through the series. Pittsburgh and New York are tied in the series, and they're playing right now, actually. Pittsburgh and New York are tied in the game in Game 5 in the first period with 17 seconds left. We'll get to that one later. Carolina and Nashville are tied in the series 2-2, which is a very interesting one. Florida is trailing Tampa 3-1 in the series. Colorado swept the Blues. Vegas leads Minnesota 3-1 in the series. Toronto and Montreal are tied 1-1. They are currently playing in Game 3 too, still 0-0 with 4 minutes left in the first. And Winnipeg leads Edmonton after 3 games, 3-0 in the series. And that's due to a huge overtime goal yesterday from Nikolai Ehlers after a 4-1 comeback in the third period.
Yeah, and it looks like in the playoffs, Connor McDavid in the regular season is Wayne Gretzky, but turns into Nail Yakupov in the playoffs. Like, the playoffs are starting to show how wrong our playoff predictions were, because we both had the Oilers winning, and that ain't gonna happen.
I would like to note first that I had the Jets going originally, and you swayed me. You swayed me the other way, so I feel played. But
don't listen to me.
I do have to stick to my pick, and I did pick Edmonton to win, and man, was I wrong.
Yeah, we're both. But one
Colorado advanced.
Yeah, one interesting series is the Maple Leafs versus the Habs. That has turned. I didn't think the series would be that close. Like that could be a very interesting series that I can see going 6 or 7. Because it seems like the Habs are just a very tough team that sticks around.
And John Tavares is out indefinitely.
Yeah, with that nasty head injury he got.
With the knee to the face.
Yeah, I think that might have taken heart out of the Maple Leafs.
That's a game changer.
Mm-hmm.
So let's see. Pittsburgh and New York, I was getting a little scared of. I still think New York can pull it off, but I am a little nervous for that series. Carolina and Nashville has already gone farther than you thought they would, and is going to go farther than I thought they would, because I thought it was going to be a 5-game series. I didn't think it'd go past that. Tampa is leading Florida, like I predicted. Colorado swept St. Louis, which I was kind of surprised about. I thought St. Louis would be able to pull a game out, maybe 2.
I wasn't.
And they just got swept, which surprised me. And then
St. Louis isn't the same team that won the Stanley Cup.
Yeah. Jordan Binnington is starting to become kind of toxic, honestly. Like he tries to be bigger than he actually plays.
Yeah.
He tries to be bigger than he is.
For some reason.
But then you got let's move on to another series that ended, one of 2 series that already ended. The Caps got eliminated by Boston, which I predicted, and what I have to say, I told you so. I mean,
before I go into my analysis, and I do just want to say congrats to the Bruins and all the fans that are of the Bruins. They played a lot better than I thought they would. They were able to completely neutralize our top 6 lines. Tuukka Rask is the MVP of that series. I don't care what anybody says. He is the MVP of that series, plain and simple. He was coming off a recent injury, and he just played out of his mind. So hats off to him. But what the hell were we doing? Our top 6 forwards they were completely neutralized. We could not do anything. It seemed like we can never get more than 10 minutes of decent offense going. It always seemed like we'd have a few spurts, but then seemed like we're on a nonstop penalty kill for the entire time. We lacked the urgency.
It looks here like you guys just kind of got burnt out after Game 3, because you had 3 straight overtime games, and like you said, Tuukka Rask was the MVP because you had 3 overtime games. He gave up the goal in Game 1, and then Game 2 and 3 he won in overtime, and then after that they were just blowing you out of the water. He didn't allow more than 1 goal in either of the final 2 games. And it just seemed like that 2 overtime game in Game 3 killed you guys.
It's just we didn't play with any urgency. It just didn't seem like we cared. And what I take from this is I want them to get rid of Kuznetsov. For me, he doesn't really bring anything. Yes, he's young, but he doesn't play like it. He plays slow and methodical, and it just seems like he's skating around the ice, just trying to not get involved. Like, I'd be more than happy for the Seattle Kraken to take him. I want them to keep Oshie. I have thought different in the past, but he is one of the heart and soul of our team. But we need to go a lot. We need to go younger. We need to change things up because our top six forwards cannot do a thing. Like Anthony Mantha, I think is the only one that you could even say played decent. Like, yes, but I do think he should put a lot more effort in. But he was able to get a lot of shots, and but I don't know. This front office has their work cut out for them. Like, we need to go a lot younger. Things need to be changed. It just seems like we've been figured out.
Well, Peter Laviolette, he will give you 3 good seasons. You got one down, and then you'll go to mediocrity. So,
well, after that, all of our players are going to be old, and we're going to be on the down anyway.
and then just a little bit of news for the Flyers since they are already out golfing. Kevin Hayes is getting hernia surgery, but that's only a 6-week
recovery.
Oust for him. Yeah, recovery. I couldn't think of what the word was. 6-week recovery. So hopefully he should be fine by the time we go back. Scott Gordon has parted ways with the Flyers organization. He was the head coach for the Phantoms. He was the interim head coach that season that the Flyers went through 8 goalies. Finally decided to call up Carter Hart. So it was mutual. So I mean, overall, that's not that bad. But I mean, I thought they were gonna possibly hire him for the head coach job when they were looking for a head coach, and then AV came along. And speaking of AV, one of the big things that a lot of fans are calling for is that AV be fired. But I was listening to this podcast a couple days ago, and one of the reporters for The Athletic had an interview with Chuck Fletcher, and Chuck Fletcher was very adamant to say that AV and the entire coaching staff, Mike Yeo, Michelle Terry, and they're all staying with the Flyers, which I'm excited about because I don't think after one bad season where there's a lot of question marks going into the season and going through the season, I don't think you fire a coaching staff after that. You have 3 former head coaches on your team, and I don't think that you should fire them after one bad season. So, and AV went to a couple cup finals, so I think it's good on Chuck Fletcher to hold on to them, and that you should give them a couple more seasons. But how do you see these?
Kraken are going to take from you?
I think James Van Riemsdyk is a possibility. Jacob Voracek is a possibility. I think those are probably the 2 biggest guys that they'll be looking at. Maybe, but and then like also we have to see what we're gonna do. Like we don't have a backup goalie anymore. Brian Elliott, it might not come back. He said he's willing to come back. He wants to play another season, and he wants to play another season. He wants to stay with the Flyers, but that's not entirely guaranteed. So we have to see what we're going to do for a backup goalie. Sean Couturier is going to need a contract soon, which is really going to hurt us because he has been way underpaid. He's the best Flyer he's the best player in the organization because Claude Giroux doesn't have the defensive abilities that Sean Couturier does. Like, don't get me wrong, Claude Giroux is an amazing player, and clearly, like, his stats show it, but Claude Giroux is more of an offensive weapon, and Sean Couturier is a jack of all trades. He plays power play, he plays 5-on-5, 4-on-4, he plays the penalty kill. He was a Selke winner. I mean, he's an amazing, and you can tell, like, when he's not there, you can see that there's a hole in the lineup, and that you can't replace him with one player. So that's going to be a rough one coming out. But I just want to talk about these series that are tied right now because the other ones are completely blown out of the water. Do you still think you had Pittsburgh beating New York, right?
Mm-hmm.
Do you still think Pittsburgh will beat New York?
Yeah, I still
Series tied 2-2.
Pittsburgh. I just think they're the better team. They have the experience. I think they'll beat them still. It is close, but that's what the Islanders have done all season. Stick around, even though they might not be the best team. They just stick around like a gnat.
Yeah. What do you think about the Carolina-Nashville series? That one, I know you're going to be. I know you had Carolina's sweeping
the Predators have proven tougher than I thought they were. I honestly didn't think they were that like tough of a team. Like they lost PK Subban, and it's like, well, after like their President's Trophy like winning team, they just fell off a cliff, it seems like. But hey, they proved me wrong. They've proven to be they're sticking in there.
There are only 2 wins in the series. I say only like they've played. Yeah, the 2 wins that they have in the series are both double overtime wins, though, which means they can't close them out in regulation, which could prove to be an issue for later in the series.
Luck in those games can be swayed either way easily. Like, sorry to bring up the Caps, but in our Cup run, remember when the Blue Jackets took 2 games off of us in the first round right off the bat in these overtime games? I just think that shows that these overtime games can really sway either way. It just depends on how lucky you are.
That when the Flyers played the Islanders last season in the playoffs, the series went to a game 7, and all 3 games that the Flyers won were won in overtime. They didn't win one in regulation. So, I mean, and then we ended up losing in 7, 4-0 in the 7th game. And so, I mean, that kind of, I think in order to be able to win, you also need to be able to get those regulation wins, especially when you're playing a team like Carolina, because Carolina is going to outskate Nashville constantly. They are going to skate circles around Nashville because Carolina is just a more complete team. So they're going to be able to hold on to momentum and be able to take advantage of the games after double overtime games. So I still think Carolina will win that, even if it goes to a game 6, which it has to.
Yeah.
What do you think about the Tampa series? You had Florida beating Tampa, but now that Tampa's up 3-2.
I had it going to 7 games. I still think it could go either way. Like each one of the games have been close, and game 1, Nikita Kucherov proved to be the difference. So if he's able to keep up that level, I don't think the Panthers will be able to match that. But I do think this is like a set in stone 7-game series.
And you love that, a 3-1 series lead going to a game 7. You love to see it. Mm-hmm. And then Toronto and Montreal. What do you think about that one? That's a 1-1 series.
That I thought that Toronto was just gonna skate circles around him, but with the John Tavares injury, the life of that team has been taken out of it. Like their captain is gone. Like he ain't coming back. So
I saw.
You give a team like the Habs just a small bit of that hope a small bit of hope to be able to feed on, and the Leafs may be starting to doubt themselves. Like I think that the Habs smell blood in the water at this point.
I think that'll be a good series to watch because Montreal is a rough team to play. They don't give up easily. I mean, they took the Flyers series to 6 last season after they shouldn't have even been in the playoffs. They were the last team to get in. There were what, 24 teams last season? Yeah, 24 teams. They were the 24th team to make it in. Barely. They were 500, and they won in the play-in because if Carey Price can steal you a couple games, you're in good shape. And I mean, Carey Price, he's not the same goalie he was, but he's still an amazing goalie. You can't put it past him.
Yeah. But
Yeah,
this series
he's
is interesting because it's one of the oldest NHL rivalries revisited that hasn't really been as prominent in the last 50 years, give or take. So I think it'll definitely start to heat up as the games progress.
I saw a video where people were talking to Leafs fans and they're like, "So do you actually think the Leafs will beat Montreal?" And they're like, "No, I don't think they will. I think Montreal will win the series." And I'm just like, that goes to show the doubt that Toronto fans have in their team.
Yeah. And
And I
like
mean, I don't
it's hard
blame
for
them.
the players not to see that. I think it's going to be pretty impossible for them not to see the fans' doubt.
And I mean, the playoffs being in actual home buildings this year is a big difference maker.
Yeah, and the
Like
fact that,
Montreal is an electric place to play.
but do Toronto allow fans? Because I don't think they do.
Oh, you're right. The Toronto and Montreal don't have fans. That's right. I
Yeah, they're
forgot
still
about that.
playing empty.
They're still playing empty, but I think game 7, I think they might have fans. I think is what it was. If they go to a game 7, there will be fans.
Could be.
But those are the ones that are super close. I know I went into Tampa and Florida, even though that one's not close, but I think that'll be a good series overall.
Yeah.
And so you only got 2 teams advancing so far, but there'll be a lot that'll happen in the next week. And let's see. So today is the 24th. So yeah, by the next one, we will have a couple. Game 7 will be a week from now if Toronto and Montreal go to a game 7. But I believe every other series will be closed out by next week.
Yeah, we should
And
be
we
able
will
to
be
start
talking.
reviewing the next matchups.
Yeah, we'll be talking about round 2, which is going to be. Well, no, because they'll still be playing division games. So it'll still be interesting, of course, but it won't be as interesting as the Final Four, which is what I'm really looking forward to. So let's hop on over to the MLB. You guys just got a series win against the Orioles,
Yay!
which
Finally.
is
And
yeah,
we played very good. Like we've been down in those games and a lot of comebacks. Josh Bell and Kyle Schwarber are really starting to swing the bat really well.
yeah.
Yeah, Josh Bell got off to a bad start, but he's starting to hit above 200 now. So I think our
Kyle
offense.
Schwarber has 8 home runs already.
Yeah, I think our offense is starting to heat up, and if especially if Soda's able to get back in the swing of things, and our pitching is able to maintain like decent to mediocre, then I could see us getting above 500. Not to be too ambitious.
The Phillies are, on the other hand, and are starting to suffer from the schedule. They've been having a rough time lately. They just played the Red Sox, which didn't help because
But your boy
Red
Zach
Sox are
Wheeler.
insane. Zach Wheeler's making a spot for himself to say he's the top pitcher in Philly. I mean, Aaron Nola hasn't been playing too well.
But a few stretch of games shouldn't decide that Zach Wheeler is better than Aaron Nola.
I didn't say that Zach Wheeler. I was saying he was making a case where I still think Aaron Nola is better than Zach Wheeler. But I think if Aaron Nola steps it up, Zach Wheeler keeps playing the way he is, you got a pretty strong 1-2 punch up there.
Yeah, but looking at these standings, the top 2 have lost a lot of games in the last 10, and the bottom 3 of the Braves, Marlins, and Nationals have each won 6 out of 4. Six wins and 4 losses in the last 10. So if that continues, we can possibly see the league table flip.
This division has completely flipped from what we thought.
I'm a turd, if we're being completely honest.
Yeah, I mean,
but
NL East is playing like the NFC East.
But looking back at the AL East, the Rays just overtook the Red Sox. The Yankees have pretty much caught up. The Blue Jays are starting to do really well, and Vladimir Guerrero Jr. Did you see the 3 home run game he had?
Again?
Yeah, and he's tied with Shohei Ohtani for the league lead in home runs. He's really swinging the stick.
Let's see. So the Phillies are on a little bit of a stretch here. They're going on 10 games in a row, and I think it's proving to hurt them because they've lost the last two series that they've played. The last three series that they've played. They lost 2 against the Blue Jays, 2 against the Marlins, and dropped 2 against the Red Sox in their last 3 series. So they've been having a lot of issues with the rest of the season. They're playing the Marlins again right now. They're tied 2-2 in the top of the fourth. But I think they need a break, because even just a one-day break just to try to get their feet back. But I mean, playing the Red Sox after losing a series to the Marlins, I don't think helped anything.
Yeah, it's starting to see that the Phillies are a little struggling, and Bryce Harper hasn't he been in and out of your lineup? Like
yeah, Bryce Harper isn't playing strong. Joe Girardi said he thinks he's playing with soreness, which, I mean, I don't think that's an amazing excuse. You're a professional baseball player. I mean, don't get me wrong, that'll affect a player, but when you're a professional athlete and you're getting paid $330 million, should you be swinging the bat a little bit better even if you're a little sore? Probably.
Mickey Mantle played with extreme knee pain throughout his entire career. Forget like
soreness.
Yeah, forget soreness over a few weeks. He played with it for his entire career. Like, there was only like the first maybe 2 years where we saw Mickey Mantle uninjured. The rest of his career, he pretty much played injured. So, and they didn't have all the medical advances back then. So, I'm not saying you have to play every single game, but soreness, really? Like, your team needs your team needs you.
Yeah, he hasn't been really playing strong, and he needs to bounce back real quick. Otherwise, we're going to be in trouble. He's not playing tonight. So Brad Miller's in right field for him.
Overrated.
Okay. Well, you're still mad that Bryce Harper signed with the Phillies and not the Nationals.
I think it's kind of funny at this point. I'm not mad because we did win a World Series. I just think it's really funny that he left and we won the World Series after he left. I just think it's a little funny. That definitely lightened the mood with me and Bryce Harper.
With that, though, I think that's all I got. Do you have anything else you have to say before we get out of here?
No, I think that's pretty much it. Hopefully in this next week, we'll start to get some information on Julio Jones. Hopefully we'll get some more about Deshaun Watson and Aaron Rodgers to see what's going on there, if the teams are still exploring trade options. But the playoffs should be wrapping up. The first round of NHL playoffs should be wrapping up here soon. So next week we should have some hot topics to talk about.
And we will see you guys on Wednesday or Thursday this week again. And yeah, I don't think we're going to have much on any of the players. Maybe Julio, but I don't think we'll have much on Deshaun Watson or Aaron Rodgers until the season starts coming around.
Never know, but
because I think they'll do their best to just sit out and hope to get traded, but I think the organizations will try to hold them there. Because I mean, those players are game changers. You don't want to let them go to another team.
Yeah, like
especially Deshaun Watson. He's still young.
Well, and Aaron Rodgers, he transforms the Packers from, like, if he were to leave, they'd go from the easy winners to pick the division to a not very good team to possibly the worst in the division, maybe.
Yeah, so I mean, you don't want to let a game changer go. So, but yeah, we will see you guys again on Wednesday, possibly Thursday, most likely Wednesday though. And you guys can go follow our Instagram at BL in the DC. I post daily scores on there of Well, not the Caps anymore. Rip
Yeah.
the Caps playoff run. But Phillies and Nationals, I post those scores up there daily. Once the football season comes around, we'll be doing that too. So go follow us on there. You can follow me at tkunik10. Follow Jacob atjalvarez639. DM us questions, comments, all that stuff. You can email us at blinthedc@gmail.com. And with that, I think we are going to go on and get out of here. So we will see you guys again in a couple days.
Later.